Hello, everyone. This is Steve Raack. I am the CEO and founder of Vitalibis. Thank you for joining today for the CBD 101 presentation. There's a lot to cover, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump on in, and we'll go through quite a bit of information along the way and go through things from extraction to the plant, etc. But most importantly, CBD is everywhere. I mean, we're seeing this everywhere from skincare to beverages to tinctures, all these different things to roll-ons. It's supposed to be the next big thing. It's definitely all over the place, but there's a lot of things that you need to think about and look at and be knowledgeable of before you start putting certain types of products into your body like you would in anything else. So what the big takeaway is, I like to start with the end in mind. I really want you to take away that CBD is not a product. CBD is actually a category of products with a lot of different variations in quality and potency and so forth. So when people say I take CBD, the first question should be like, well, what kind? And where are you getting it from? And what it should spark some questions. I look at CBD as like it's cereal or cheese or wine or beer. It's a category of multiple things. And so hopefully this presentation, you get an idea of what questions to ask, what you're looking for specific things, what people are taking, what people are talking about. Because if someone's pitching you just CBD, you should look at it a little bit differently and educate yourself and educate them that there's a wide range of things that are happening in this particular category of products. And so this presentation, we're going to walk through pieces of the plant. We're going to walk through the extraction, what the products are and the benefits. And I've kind of structured it this way to kind of flow the story. But more importantly, you need to know really back to the plant. And a lot of people are not talking about the plant. So we're going to talk a little bit about that up front. So this plant is a beautiful plant. Think of cannabis, hemp, and marijuana right now as being interchanged in their conversation with everybody. Oh gosh, are you taking that marijuana oil? No, I'm taking CBD oil. No, I'm taking hemp oil. No, it's cannabis sativa. Lots of different things. Think of cannabis as the parent and hemp and marijuana as the two kids, the siblings in a sense. So one of them has a high level of THC, one of them doesn't. And so when you look at this piece of the puzzle of this cannabis plant, know that there are products on the marijuana side and there are products on the hemp side. And THC is really the main differentiator. There's other things that can go on in there, but let's talk about THC as the main differentiator. Whereas the CBD side, the legal side that's going across state lines and different things, that's the non-psychoactive side in a sense. THC is the only ingredient in the plant that actually can get you high. So this is the difference. Cannabis as the parents, hemp and marijuana as the kids. And there's actually over 450 elements in this plant. So most people only talk about 2. So part of this education process to say there's over 80 cannabinoids in this beautiful plant. CBN, CBG, CBC, etc. There's also terpenes, flavonoids, chlorophyll, waxes, fatty acids, omegas. There's a whole bunch of pieces in this plant. So part of the education is, again, CBD is not a product. It's a whole bunch of different things involved in this process. And terpenes, for instance, when we talk about those, that's where the flavor and the scent come from. So somebody will say, well, I smelled a whole bunch of marijuana. Well, it's the terpenes that you're kind of smelling. It's not necessarily the THC or anything of that nature. So think of this plant as a very delicate plant with lots of different elements. And I want people to understand that it's not just CBD that we're talking about most of the time. In some products it is, and we'll get to that in a minute. So when you look at the plant itself, there are different uses for it. We have nutritional products, skincare and body care products. Those are coming from the plant, the hemp seed protein, for instance, the seed itself. So the seed can be ground up into proteins. The seed can be pressed and kind of extracted into an oil that's a beautiful cannabis sativa seed oil for skincare and beauty care products. Those things have been legal. Those things are fine. Everyone's okay with those. It passes all the tests. On the bottom end of the plant, the stalk and the stems, etc., those have been used for centuries for ropes and sails and textiles and paper and plastics. What happens is when we start to move into the flower where all the cannabinoids and the terpenes and all the different pieces are, that's where the tinctures are coming from. The full spectrum hemp oils are coming from, and the CBD powders and the skincare with full spectrum oils, that's really more from the flower. So again, it comes different parts of the plant for different pieces. So somebody will say, well, I take hemp seed oil. Well, it's not necessarily the same oil as it's coming from the flower. So you have to understand that there's different parts, and when you start talking about different pieces of this plant, there are more variations than not. But there are some beautiful pieces of this plant, and it's, again, a very delicate plant. So On the left-hand side, that's kind of the history of hemp, right? We grew these stalks to get the fibers for sails and ropes and different things. You know, in the 1600s, you grew hemp and paid your taxes with hemp, and we had different places all over the world that were using hemp and the fibers from that to make the sails for the English armadas and different things. That's what it looked like in the past. It was these long, stringy kind of plants that just grew out in the middle of farms and fields out there, and that's actually what hemp looked like. On the right-hand side, this is kind of hemp today. People confuse the look with marijuana. It looks like marijuana. Well, that's part of some of the challenges with people crossing state lines and different things. That's why they have to test and find out what the THC levels are, because we're focused now more on the flower when it comes to these tinctures and these oils and these full spectrum products. In the past, again, it was a long, stringy, tall plant. Now you're getting these flowers that are big buds and big areas that are holding all these beautiful elements that are in our different oils. So you can see the transition from the type of plant, even though it's the same plant, right? It moves, and it's just the way it's grown, it's the way it's extracted. There's some genetics involved. There's a whole bunch of other stories and techniques in the growing side, but that's kind of an idea of what's kind of the transformation of just even in the CBD world. So when you're looking at these products and these different things, in the recreational side of marijuana side, people are talking about, I smoke blueberry or AC/DC or sour diesel and those types of things. They have different strains, different terpenes, different mixes, different growing techniques, different seeds, a whole bunch of different stuff. And we look at the recreational side a little bit differently. If you ever go to a dispensary or anything, you're sometimes looking at what's the ratio of THC to CBD. Is it 20 to 1? Is it 1 to 1? Those types of things. 20 to 1 will get you way more higher than 1 to 1, typically, because you have a much higher THC ratio than CBD ratio. On the hemp side, our ratios are the opposite. So we have 1 to 28. So we have way more CBD than we do have on the THC side. So you'll start to look at full spectrum oils. You'll say, what is that? What's your ratio? Oh, it's 1 to 28. It's 1 to 30. So that's another way to look at the differences between the recreational side and the hemp side. When I start to look at things, I start to put them back into the analogies again. Like CBD is a category of products just like wine. And when you look at the types of strains of grapes that grow into certain wines, where they're grown, how they're grown, you know, are they Merlot grapes, or are they Chardonnay grapes, or what are they? And so the best brands that are looking out there to carefully collect and create the best products, they're looking at the strains, which is why I spend some time on it up front in this presentation. We need to look at the strains because that brings in profiles, that brings in flavors. If the brands out there that are actually just buying from brokers and wholesale distributors, they don't really know what the strains are. They don't really care sometimes what the strains are. They're just buying the oil, putting a label on it and saying they're in the CBD business. Those of the other brands like ourselves, we're focusing on what's the strains, what's the profile, what's the mix, what's the taste, what's the flavor. And that's more of the craft side of the business, of the hemp side of the business, versus if you were looking at craft beer versus regular, off-the-shelf beer, that's the difference, right? We're looking at the plant itself because it all starts from there. The other thing about the plant is that it's a safety warning. It's a safety conversation. It's because cannabis in and of itself, hemp, marijuana, cannabis in and of itself is what's called a phytoremediator. So it goes down into the ground that it's grown in, and it pulls impurities out of the ground into the plant. If those toxins and heavy metals and pesticides are coming out of the ground into the plant, we take that plant and we put it into our body. That might have trace elements, that might have other pieces that aren't necessarily good for your body, that are harmful to your health. So it's very important to understand, again, when you're looking at buying a CBD oil, what are the tests being done on that product? What's going on? Is there heavy metals in that product? Is there pesticide residue in that product? Are you asking the right questions? Or are you just taking it because it's a fad? So we like to look at products, and we like to look at brands that are actually going in and understanding that phytoremediation is a key thing that happens in the cannabis plants. And we need to be very, very cognizant of that when we're ingesting that into our body or putting it onto our skin. So farmers in the past would actually grow hemp, clean their soil before they would actually plant other crops, and then they would take that hemp and they would turn it into the textiles and the ropes and stuff. They wouldn't eat it, they wouldn't consume it, but they would turn it into something else. So that's just another piece to understand the plant itself and why we are focused on the safety of CBD oils and the safety of these products versus just putting random things into our body.